Good day, everyone. How are you doing? This is Aiken Story, Mr. Make and Pay. I'm here trying to talk to you guys about what happened to Mr. Elijah McClain. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, I'll please like you to click subscribe and also click the bell notification. So anytime I upload new videos, you'll be the first person to get that notification. Today I'll be talking to you guys about what happened to Mr. Elijah McClain, and I'll give you my opinion at the end of this recording. So that way, I want you guys to wait till the end to let you know what I feel about the whole situation. But before I start, I'm going to tell you guys briefly about what happened. Also, I'm going to put the links to all the videos in the description, so you can look at the description and click the links to all the videos and watch them in full. I'm not going to show the entire video. It's too long and I don't think every part is really relevant. However, if you want to watch the entire video, you should definitely click the link in the description box. Anyway, Mr. Elijah McClain sometime last year went to a convenience store to buy some some stuff from the convenience store. As he got to the convenience store, he had on a ski mask. The encounter was pretty much routine. Nobody in the convenience store had any issues with Mr. McClain. He paid for his items and he actually took a bow, to the cashier, to the clerk when he was leaving. So everything looked fine, looked respectful, and he walks home. So on his way home, it appears somebody saw him and called 911. The person who called 911 told the 911 operator that, hey, this guy's suspicious. He has on a ski mask. However, he tells the 911 operator that, he didn't feel threatened and that he didn't have a gun, but that he was just wearing a ski mask. But he was walking home. The 911 operator asked this person, "Are you safe?" He said, "Yes." So it appears that there was nothing wrong that Mr. McClain was doing. So the 911 operator said he was going to send the police officers to go check on Mr. McClain. So you would think that it looks to me like a welfare check, nothing that will suggest any criminal activity happened. So as the officers approached Mr. McClain and said, "Hey, Mr. McClain, you look suspicious. Turn around." They just went so aggressive towards Mr. McClain. "Turn around." I believe the officer said, "I have a right to stop you because you're being suspicious."
Right there. Hey, stop right there. Stop. 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 I have a right to stop you because you're being suspicious.
Well, okay.
Turn around.
No,
Turn around.
actually, your hands are
Turn around.
Stop.
Stop tensing up, dude. Stop tensing up, bro. Stop tensing up.
Let go of me.
Stop tensing.
And bam, just turned Mr. McClain around. It looks like he put handcuffs on him, put him down. Obviously, he tried to, put his knee on his back or did some kind of maneuver that was affecting Mr. McClain's ability to breathe, because Mr. McClain kept saying, "I can't breathe," and he was telling the officer, trying to plead with the officer. It's very important that Mr. McClain said that he was listening to music, and he said, "Hey, you guys are trying to arrest me. I was stopping my music to listen."
No, I am an introvert. Please respect the boundaries that I am speaking.
Stop tensing up.
Stop.
Relax.
Stop. I'm going home.
Relax, or I'm going to have to change this situation. Stop.
Leave me alone.
Stop.
Can you please?
No, can you leave me alone?
No, we're gonna.
First
talk
off,
to
you guys started to arrest me, and I was stopping my music to listen. No.
That suggests that he was trying to let the officers know that, hey, I have my headphones on. I was listening to music. I was trying to reduce the volume of my music so I can hear you. But the officer was not having it. during the encounter, it appears there were 3 or 4 officers there. One of the officers said that he has superhuman strength. I'm like, Mr. McClain appears to be a small person, maybe no more than 140 or 50 pounds. So I don't know where this superhuman strength came from, like Superman or Batman or whatever. So that was shocking to me. That didn't make any sense to me. Then the officer now said, Mr. McClain told the officer, like, I'm an introvert, please respect the boundaries. The officer said, I'm going to have to change the situation. Think about it. This was a very, very, it was a situation where there was no violence involved. The officer was just responding to somebody walking down the street with a ski mask. Mr. McClain told the officer, obviously he said, I can't breathe. I know a lot of people are familiar with those words. Unfortunately, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. He also told the officer, I have no gun. He said, I don't even kill flies. I don't judge people who do eat meat. All I'm trying to do is become better. I'm just different. I'm sorry. I don't do any fighting. I don't judge people. And, you know, he was just telling the officers all those things. And you would think the officers would pause for a second and say, hey, you know, maybe he's a special needs person. Maybe something is going on. Obviously, this guy doesn't look that threatening. Why are we still detaining him and arresting him? Then another officer told the other officer on the scene that Mr. McClain was reaching for the officer's gun. And the officer clearly said, hey, I didn't feel anything.
Wrap him up, and then in the midst of them wrapping him up, pushing him against the wall right here, he reached for Rosie's gun, dude. So,
And he's like, I don't remember exactly what he was saying right now, but just acting really strange.
Randy, you needed relief, buddy? Randy, you needed relief?
no, I'm good. I'm just gonna pat him down, make sure.
And then over there, Rhodey tells me to try to grab my gun. So we pull him down.
While he's
Yeah, so he pulls his arm free and comes out. And I don't remember feeling it because I was focused on him. But he said, you trying to grab a gun? So I'm like, okay. So he comes down.
So I don't understand where that came from. Why is it that another officer claims that Mr. McClain was reaching for the officer's gun, but the officer said he didn't feel anything? So it appears Mr. McClain was throwing up in the video. And at some point in time, the medics came and gave him ketamine. I don't know why there was any need for giving Mr. McClain ketamine. I'm not a medical doctor, so I don't know the clinical necessity as to why ketamine was needed. But if somebody is just walking home and you have an officer just come and just grabs the person, turns them around, saying you have a right to detain because you look suspicious, and it leads to you being injected with ketamine, like what is going on here? So that pretty much sums up the relevant parts of the video. So I'll give you my opinion. First of all, from a legal standpoint, the officer's encounter was pretty much supposed to be what we call a first tier encounter. When an officer encounters somebody, a first tier encounter, that person does not even have to talk to the officer. That person is free to leave. As a matter of fact, that person can run away from the officer. Pretty much a first tier encounter, officer does not have any right to make that person feel that they are not free to leave, because it's just an encounter. All the officer can do is ask for the person's name, and if the person doesn't want to talk to the officer and keeps walking because there was no criminal activity going on. Before the officer can temporarily detain somebody, that officer has to have reasonable, articulable suspicion. And it has to be based on an objective basis, not a mere hunch. Again, from this case, the officer has to have what we call reasonable, articulable suspicion that the person was engaging in criminal activity. There was no suspicion that Mr. McClain was engaging in any criminal activity. Mr. McClain was just walking home with a ski mask on. The 911 operator never said he committed any wrong. He never hijacked a car. He never pull out a gun on somebody. He never robbed a store. He was just walking home. So there was no articulable suspicion that is backed by any objective facts that Mr. McClain was doing anything wrong, any criminal activity that would give the officer the authority to temporarily detain Mr. McClain. So all the officer had the right to do was ask Mr. McClain questions, and Mr. McClain did not even have to answer. And the officer did not even do that. If you see what the officer did, the officer just straight up went to him and said, I have a right to stop you because you're being suspicious. Bam! Turns him around and tries to handcuff him. That is completely against the law. Again, this is the Constitution we're talking about. It's the Fourth Amendment. It trumps any state law that we have. This is the supreme law of the land. Before an officer can arrest somebody, that officer has to have probable cause. This is the third tier. This officer here did not even have reasonable articulable suspicion to temporarily detain Mr. McClain, let alone probable cause to arrest him. And what is an arrest? Putting handcuffs on somebody is an arrest. Everybody knows that. However, an arrest is also when the officer puts a person in a position that that person feels that they're not free to leave, or that the detention is not temporary. So you have the officers here who violated Mr. McClain's Fourth Amendment rights by detaining him without any reasonable suspicion, and to make matters worse, by pretty much arresting him without probable cause. So Mr. McClain eventually dies, I believe, in the hospital. He had brain damage because he was being choked, or the kind of maneuvers that the officer did on him deprived him of oxygen. So he probably suffers from brain damage. He eventually died while in their custody, pretty much, because when Mr. McClain was walking home, he was fine. Nothing happened. When the officer arrested him, pretty much, that's when all this stuff started to go downhill. So Mr. McClain was injured, and pretty much the officers are responsible for his death. It is also particularly sad that this is Aurora, Colorado, the same police department where you had a guy by the name of James Holmes. He shut up a movie theater. I believe he killed 12 people and injured about 70 people. And I'm like, he was captured alive after killing 12 people and injuring 70 people in a mass murder. But Mr. McClain here, walking home, had not engaged in any criminal activity. And you have this officer who just comes, arrest him, and he ends up being dead. And the officers have not been charged. It appears they were cleared by the DA. The DA, quote unquote, found no wrongdoing. And the DA said that the medical examiner could not find a cause of death. This brings me to some of this medical examiner's opinions, just like the George Floyd case, where the medical examiner gave an opinion that was inconclusive as to the cause of death and said that maybe he died of heart problems, whereas the family hired an independent pathology whose opinion was different from the medical examiner. So it doesn't appear that the family of Mr. McClain got an independent opinion from a pathologist. So who knows, maybe if that independent pathologist had done his autopsy, he may have had a different opinion from the medical examiner. So that's another thing to think about. But nevertheless, these officers were wrong in terms of, at the very least, they violated Mr. McClain's Fourth Amendment rights. They had no reasonable articulable suspicion to detain him temporarily, let alone have probable cause to arrest him. He was not doing anything wrong because he was not suspicious of criminal activity. There was no objective basis other than he was walking home just walking home is not an objective basis that you're engaging in criminal activity that will give the officer authority to temporarily detain you. So it's just an unfortunate situation that these officers are still not charged. They're still not being held responsible. And I think that the district attorney in that area, or the governor, it appears, may have appointed the attorney general to open this case. Obviously, anyone who studies this area of law knows that the officers violated Mr. McClain's constitutional rights, his Fourth Amendment rights, because there is no objective basis that gives the officer any authority to detain Mr. McClain temporarily. So I would like you guys to share your comments and like the video if you agree with me, and if you don't, I mean, that's fine. You can put a thumbs down, you can comment, share the video. I'd like to see what you guys feel about this incident. And if you haven't subscribed, I encourage you to subscribe to my channel and click the bell notification. Thank you very much for watching the video. On to the next one.